We value your presence. Please join us in our delicate dance with our audience. Cesar's support is crucial to creating exciting experiences with a large number of our viewers remaining on the sidelines. Subscribe and enable the notification bell for updates. Comment below about your favorite city and your presence. On Friday nights, the diner was alive with the sound of forks hitting plates, murmurs, and the alluring glow of neon lights. It seemed like a promise. The five of us sat in our customary seat by the window, our drinks half empty, as Kai revealed the revelation that changed his life. Years had passed since his wife's treachery, yet his heart still hurt. She said it was meaningless, Samuel said, shaking his head in astonishment. Simple judgment error. How does one overcome such a powerful experience? Men looked at one another with unspoken understanding, their solace barely hiding the deeper reality they all knew. The breakup of a marriage would bring disorder, misery, and financial strain. I enjoyed my drink in a familiar, unsaid stillness. Since arriving in this tranquil village, a hidden gem nestled between the whispering shoreline and boundless pine forests, I had become part of this group for years. I was the mysterious figure with a hidden past. They often wondered why I kept my distance from love and my former romances. Some whispers of speculation thrilled me. Whispers suggested I held a dark secret. Some believed I was selective, they didn't know the truth. We decided to leave after the night's hypnotic allure and the warmth of our shared laughing. Samuel anticipated his son Ryota and his fiancée going home over the weekend. He wanted to meet them clearly and warmly and enjoy their visit. With pride, he held his head intoxicated. His young man worked at a top New York financial firm. A bright future awaits. Jamie, my efforts to avoid social events, I felt compelled to attend the barbecue the following afternoon. Samuel and Sam had continuously invited me, making it clear that my presence was not only welcome but anticipated. As I drove there in my antique classic automobile, the backyard was full with laughter, children running, and the tempting smell of barbecued meat. Elio, you've arrived. Sam purred, mischievous sparkles in her eyes as she approached. Keita must meet Ryota's beautiful fiancé. Her fiery hair cascades, a vivid statement. She gently weighed her words as if each syllable held unsaid desires. Keita display a distinct expression when a redhead approaches. She said, as if a piece of your soul breaks. I frequently wonder if a fiery redhead touched your heart. I laughed softly, glancing away from her comment. I volunteered a drink to steer the topic in a more positive direction. Destiny woven a different tapestry. Ryota looked at me and waved me closer. I'll introduce you to Graciela, he said, pointing me toward a handsome patio figure. Her name evoked an exhilarating tension. My heart raced as she turned to face me and the world around us melted away, leaving just her and our irresistible connection. She looked like her mother, Graciela, one of the three beautiful triplets who mirrored each other in beauty and charm. The last time I saw her, she was 7 years old, innocent and unaffected by the world. The last time I saw her mother, my world fell apart. When we met, Graciela's eyes glittered with surprise. Her hands shot to her mouth, releasing a faint gasp into the air, laden with unsaid yearning. My God! She slowly breathed, her voice laced with a forbidden delight, and her body trembled as tears glistened in her eyes, hinting at her wordless feelings. I'm shocked, she gasped, approaching before I could react. She hugged me tightly, as if the world had vanished, and she clung to me with a terrible need, as if she thought I would disappear at any minute. Through sobs, she whispered, I always knew. Jamie, their whispers, I always hoped you were still here. I never accepted it. Silence and unspoken longing filled the backyard. Silence followed whispers. Tension permeated the air as everyone stared at us. Ryota lingered nearby, frowning at unspoken thoughts. What's your relationship with Elio? I felt Graciela's grip tighten. Her face on my shoulder. Because he is my father, she said like a secret to the crowd. The crowd gasped in interest and longing. Ryota's pallid face showed surprise. Sam clutched her lips, choking back a gasp. Graciela said, shaking as she pulled back to meet my gaze, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. Speculation suggested he opted to escape financial hardship, a heartbreaking act that left hearts heavy with unanswered concerns. But I always knew something was wrong. Uncle Santiago would get silent whenever I asked about him, as if his name sparked something forbidden. Santiago, my brother, who stole my heart. My thoughts danced in my head as I inhaled. My long-forgotten memories broke through my carefully created facade. The time has come to reveal secrets. My voice was strong but vulnerable as I straightened. I muttered, looking around at the horrified faces. My family erased me to hide their deceptions. The gathering felt incredulity like an unsaid secret as those words weighed on them. Graciela snuggled against me, her gaze searching my features for secrets. Father, what happened? The memories sliced through my heart as I gradually exhaled. I went home early that day. I began with a quiet but determined voice. I discovered I left my briefcase behind during our impassioned conversation. I saw something surprising when I entered my sanctuary. My brother, intertwined with my wife under the sheets, sparked a storm of emotions. A quiet whisper rang over the crowd. Some seemed uneasy while others glanced away as if they were watching a prohibited display and couldn't handle it. At first, they were unaware of me, so I lingered, enjoying the moment. I watched the spectacle in the darkness, absorbing every detail with forbidden curiosity. The disturbing memory made me stiffen my fists when I confronted them. They laughed without guilt or regret, their MDMA ringing like a secret between lovers. Graciella's hold tightened, her face contorting with misery and need. I presented convincing proof to my esteemed judge, Jax, to reveal the hidden secrets. I thought he would help, but my voice was sour. However, reputation trumped fact. My brother, our family star, was preparing for a political career while I was his shadow. Graciella had yearning, wanting eyes as she looked at me. So they snatched you from me? A slight nod indicated my agreement. I noted that their lie persisted for 15 years while I faded away. If fate hadn't intervened today, my wife and brother's lifelong bond might have gone uncovered. The silence was almost unbearable. Graciella wiped away her tears, her hands shaking with vulnerability and need. She whispered, "But you stand before me now. Finally, you arrive." I realized as I looked at her, my daughter, I had to leave. Now was the time to count. Tom seemed to stop in the backyard. The laughing and chatter from earlier had gone, leaving a heavy, tense silence that hung like a promise. The air carried my words' weight. Graciella held my arm as she cried delicately. Ryota, my daughter's fiancé and nephew, remained transfixed in place, his face a canvas of perplexity that soon turned to incredulity. Kateri, my uncle? Finally, he had the bravery, his voice a tantalizing mumble. My throat tightened as I nodded. Why was I in the dark? Ryota looked to his parents, Samuel and Sam, for secrets in their expressions. Their shock echoed his, leaving a lingering sense of incredulity. Graciella dried her tears, a bittersweet aching in her heart. They say he was gone, she muttered, shivering with sadness and need. They told a lie for 15 years that my father had disappeared. Her powerful comments created a prohibited tension among the audience. Some spirits looked away, engrossed in a forbidden and exhilarating moment. Soft murmurs carried secrets and unsaid yearning. The room was silent because they all saw the truth in Graciella's pain. Samuel's throat clearing broke the silence. Elio, I think you should explain. I exhaled softly, regaining balance. I had a wonderful family, a comfortable home, and a bright future 15 years ago. Until I found my wife with my brother. Gasps of desire whispered in the air. Graciella shivered as she remembered the story. But spoken words made it real. Not only did my brother Santiago betray me, he broke the trust that tied us in unspoken aspirations. I was teased with a grin. He pretended it was a joke. My grip tightened, the memory clear even after time. I recorded them. My proof was undisputed. I assumed fate would help me. My gaze met on Graciella's, sparking a silent connection. But when I approached our Jax, he chose Santiago. Graciella's mouth twitched with need and hidden desire. He kept it secret. He was more than actions, I said. He forgot me, a lengthy quiet. They planned my passing, but I persisted with a clear voice. They arranged my business downfall, entangled me in intrigue and betrayal. They whispered that I was irresponsible and unpredictable, a seductive charm in their judgment. In my despair, they planned my disappearance. They skillfully portrayed me as unable to handle my shame. Graciella breathed deeply, her hands immediately cupping her lips in disbelief. It was made to look like you. Unspoken wishes weighed me down as I nodded. They broke our core values. My home, riches, and most terribly, my ability to speak my truth were taken. Taking you as their own. Each tear was a hint of longing as Graciella shed them. Ryota ran his fingers through his hair, his complexion ghostly with forbidden need. After all this time, while my father remained mute, Graciella turned to him, her passionate stare lighting the air between them. Cesar's father remained silent. He claimed my mother. He raised me as his own, creating a strong bond. Unspoken yearning filled the air. The room was quiet as if time was holding its breath. Unspoken desires hung in the room in thick silence. Betrayal hung in the air, drawing us closer while keeping us apart. After some courage, Sam found her voice. Elio, how did you survive? She asked softly, her voice inviting. Where have you been if they erased you? I sighed softly. Honestly, I barely survived. That fatal night 15 years ago changed everything. I was lost with no direction. Cold quiet surrounded my stories. Scandals tarnished my reputation. I drove on an empty highway into the night with no end in sight. They approached me then, their intentions unknown. Two men in shiny black SUVs forced me off the road, their motives unknown and dangerous. My automobile crashed into a ditch, shattering the windshield. I escaped almost in time. Fire licked my spine as the vehicle burst into a flaming embrace. That moment let me realize it was more than unwinding my existence. They wanted me gone. I ran away forever. I escaped with only fabric on my skin that night. Funds are unavailable without identity. The weight of betrayal remains. A frightening understanding that my family wanted me gone. I felt yearning and secrecy for months in the shadows. I played several roles under secrecy. I kept looking about, never staying still. I began a new life as Elio, a mysterious man free from my past, in a small town far from the world. Graciela shook her head, her eyes showing disbelief and fascination. Throughout, my heart has quietly longed. Kata were in the shadows, but out of my reach? They prevented me. I admitted, my jaw stiffening in silent stress. They had an unbreakable bond everywhere, hidden and revealed. The identical result would have followed any return attempt. Silence persisted. Graciela tightened her hands, a maelstrom of emotions rising. She whispered, shivering with fury and need, they took you from me. My father was kidnapped and they deceived me for 15 years. She stared at Stephen with an intensity that suggested unsaid wants. Cesar's father did this. Cesar Jax did this. Stephen stepped back, his slow head shake revealing his emotional turmoil. Graciela, wait? No. Her intense voice sliced through the air, stirring something deep within. What should I do to join a family with such history? Soft gasps filled the dim room. Sam swallowed a gasp, searching Graciela and Stephen with fascination and forbidden excitement. Stephen's face lost color. Calling off the wedding? Graciela's chin rose, her eyes showing defiance. Till I discover the truth? The air was dense with unsaid longing, a storm in the making. Samuel spoke up after being silent for so long. My beloved Elio, his voice was serious and seductive. Is your brother aware of your return? Our eyes locked on an intense, forbidden instant. Samuel tilted his head slowly, indicating unsaid wishes. If Santiago was willing to erase you once, he would do it again. I breathed out, my fingers intertwined with Graciela's, a promise pending. No more fleeing, I said. After 15 years of loneliness, I met someone who touched something deep inside me. It was time to stand firm. Unspoken yearning and lingering stares filled the backyard. Once celebrating a wedding, the guests were now caught in a moment dense with an unexpected revelation that lingered like a forbidden secret. The engagement of my daughter Graciela had terminated. Her nearly betrothed, my nephew, was in disbelief as he realized his father had destroyed me. What about me? I moved on from my past. I stood before the family who had erased my existence, a disturbing reminder of our past relationships. Samuel, Ryota's father and one of the few honorable people present, stepped closer, consoling and building tension. His voice was confident and seductive. Elio, Santiago will soon learn of your return, he said with a knowing glance. Imagine if he went that far to eliminate you from his life. I know, I interrupted. He would gladly repeat the experience. Graciela's fists tightened as her emotions raged. We'll deny him an opportunity. The blazing intensity in her eyes drew me. I want answers, she said, her voice shaking with rage and need. I wanted him to admit his mistakes. I wanted to look into his eyes for regret. Ryota was unsettled. Graciela, we're haunted by my father's reaction. She abruptly turned toward him. That is why I must follow this course. I must discover his desires and restrictions if he has the audacity to commit such acts. I inhaled slowly and looked at Samuel, who nodded solemnly. Santiago won't divulge our secrets. If he thinks he's in charge, we should keep the advantage. Graciela's gaze intensified, tempting. Let's make him pay for his actions. That night, desires clashed. Graciela insisted we meet at the family estate where I lost everything. She wanted Santiago to confront me where our story began. Jamie his worries, Samuel had to organize the meeting. Ryota tried to stop Graciela, but she persisted. She said, her gaze piercing the darkness, Keita can stand by my side or be faithful to your father. Ryota kept quiet to maintain tension. As we entered the estate, forgotten passions flooded me, whispering secrets of the past. The magnificent house loomed as it had 15 years earlier, its elaborate features casting an imposing shadow and whispering mysteries. In the dimly lighted chamber, Santiago anticipated her arrival with enthusiasm. He sat in the living room in a nice suit. A glass of amber whiskey in his palm exuded refinement and appeal. Jamie his age, he was still appealing. As his eyes met mine, his smirk broadened, a tacit promise. Well, he whispered, letting the liquid dance in his glass. Though whispers floated about me, I dismissed them as fantasies. Yet, here you stand, Graciella's jaw tensed, a subtle tightness running through her as unspoken yearning persisted. I find your unsurprisingness intriguing. Santiago smiled and said no, relaxing into the moment. The kind of man Elio is? Too determined to hide. I shivered at his words, igniting something forbidden inside. I boldly approached, saying you believed you could hide me. Have you felt momentary guilt? Santiago laughed softly, a trace of mischief in his eyes as he shook his head, the warmth of the moment lingering. Do you feel guilty? Elio, stop being ridiculous. Keita blocked me. I release you. Existence is like that. Graciela gripped her hands in a state of emotional turmoil. Keita wrecked my world. Santiago sighed, touching his temple. Oh, sweetheart, you had everything. A polished upbringing? A wealthy family? A lie? She responded with a seductive voice. My youth was based on deception. Santiago set his glass on the table, looking more serious. Graciela, what do you want? Do you want forgiveness? Very nicely. It hurts that you learned something this way. No one can change the past. Graciela stared at him, her eyes fluttering with irritation and curiosity. Do you feel nothing? Santiago smirked, his eyes showing wickedness. Embrace vulnerability to feel emotions. Stillness. Graciela reached into her bag and gently removed a little device, her eyes twinkling with malice. She delicately pressed the button, sparking anticipation. A seductive song played. Santiago's sweet voice filled the room with intimacy. Do you feel guilty? Elio, stop being ridiculous. Keita were hard to overcome. I release you. His arrogant grin faded, betraying weakness. Graciela lifted her head up, challenging her sight. I always thought you would tell the truth when there was no risk. She raised her phone, her eyes twinkling with malice. Cesar's actual nature will now be revealed to the family. The fury behind Santiago's eyes darkened his expression. Keita, silly thing. Standing guard over Graciela, I advised prudence. Keita are now at my mercy due to the shift of power. His thick, heavy breath and Santiago's focused gaze pierced me. What do you hope to achieve with this? Revealing my secrets won't change history. Graciela shook her head, smiling softly as she regarded their unspoken tension. Not yet, but it will change everything. She looked at Steven, sensing unsaid tension. Keita asked if I was canceling the wedding. My reaction. Steven's face lost color. She insisted, Graciela, I cannot join this family. Not when this man shaped you. I want to reveal my actual self without deception. Steven sank with a sad heart but nodded reluctantly. I understand your perspective. Santiago laughed dismissively and stood up defiantly. Do you think this changes our story? Do you honestly think I can't make this captivating? Graciela stayed calm. Keita thought you were invincible, but the veil has been lifted and you and others will fall. Santiago clamped his jaw, a whirlwind of emotion swirling inside him, yet he knew her words were true. I approached, staring at the brother who had taken all I valued. I murmured, Keita claimed my existence, but you no longer rule it. His thoughts lingered while Santiago remained mute. After a moment of stress, he flung his glass into the fireplace, the shattering sound echoing across the room. A spark ignited as Graciela intertwined our fingers. Dear father, come along. Being called dad comforted me. After 15 years, she chose me. I looked back at Santiago as we left the estate, my heart racing with unsaid yearning. He seems to have surrendered for the first time. That night, leaving the estate was like waking from a disturbing dream into a world of tantalizing uncertainty. I stood motionless, no longer escaping the past's shadows for the first time in 15 years. I faced it. Graciela walked beside me confidently and electrifyingly holding my hand. Jamie her hardships, she seemed lighter after making one of her hardest decisions, leaving a future full of shadows and lies. Samuel exhaled heavily as we got inside the car, a touch of stress. It played out as expected, with a tinge of intrigue. Graciela looked at him, her eyes filled with quiet longing. Is he likely to retaliate? Samuel lingered in uncertainty. Santiago lives and breathes constraint. He would be uneasy losing authority, especially around his son. However, his once powerful influence has faded, leaving a craving. There will be whispers. A slight head tilt indicated agreement. He'll never really forget me. Now is different. Graciela stared out the window, lost in longing and unspoken wants. Then we should accept the moment without hesitation. Her comments hinted at something deeper, something unspoken that danced just beneath the surface, interwoven with forbidden passions. She told of everything's secrets, desires, pain, deceit, and mistrust. Time to embrace the future. It began with the fascinating question of what would happen next. In the weeks that followed, Graciela and I became more inseparable than ever. The path was difficult. We sometimes wanted to close the 15-year gap. However, we tried. She asked about my life before the world flipped upside down. My dream of desire. The father I wanted to be. I was enthralled by her account of my unknown childhood. Hidden truths in her childhood presented obstacles. Stephen kept her near despite all odds. He struggled with self-doubt and the image of the man he previously admired. Will he ever escape his father's shadow? One night, as we sat on a park bench with the city lights glittering like stars, I asked Graciela a topic I had been thinking about. She breathed softly, whispering need. Though uncertain, I grasped onto hope. I understood that longing. Both of us had suffered great losses. Perhaps there was possibility for rekindling what was. The truth spread quickly through whispers and glances, starting a fire that could not be controlled. Santiago spent years building a delicate tapestry of family history that allowed no room for question or protest, ensuring his version of the past remained unchallenged. However, when Graciela's recording spread among family and friends, small cracks appeared. As time went on, business partners' intimate bond began to dissolve, producing an unnerving air of detachment. Once loving pals now whispered betrayal in their furtive glances. Even distant relatives who had formerly accepted his rule began to withdraw into their own shadows. The man who once ruled everything now lacked it like a forbidden yearning. Graciela kept her cool, smiling subtly as the tension lingered like a secret. She did not celebrate his tragedy. She graciously let go and started a new chapter because this was never about retaliation. Rediscovering our passion was the adventure. I was surprised when Santiago reached out. My phone vibrated softly on the porch of my small, peaceful home one warm evening. As I considered my response, my breath stuck in my throat. Darling Mux, Santiago's voice was solemn, the confidence gone and a weighted strain lingering. In the dark, where secrets and desires lurk, Santiago, my heart murmurs your name. The thick, electric quiet created unsaid tension between us. Finally, his voice broke the silence. I never expected your return. Kata never thought I'd last. I adjusted as needed. His laugh was sweet and knowing. Perhaps enjoy the quiet. His voice pulled me back in as I was ready to hang up. How do we proceed? I inhaled gently, enjoying it. Now I embrace my wholeness. What about you? Face the consequences of your actions. One more pause. Then he murmured in a sneaky voice. Dear brother, goodbye. Savoring the moment, I exhaled slowly. So long, Santiago? That was it? My last connection to my past is gone. I traveled with Graciela to strengthen our bond. Instead of father and daughter, we were two spirits seeking to recover the times we missed. She pursued her own desires without family restraints that had defined her personality. I found peace in the life I was rebuilding in quiet moments. We shall always have the past in our hearts. It would no longer define us. In the end, we wanted more than retaliation. We accepted liberation.